In the last video, I imagined the baseline internet user and explained how the technology underpinning the internet can result in someone's internet use becoming political in a particular way. From the perspective of political economy, when the average user engages with the internet, they can, without even realizing it, end up bankrolling companies like Amazon and Cisco, and in doing so, contribute to the power of those companies. Due solely to these companies' role in infrastructure of the internet, someone who pays for Netflix instead of Prime Video can still end up adding to the value of Jeff Bezos' considerable fortune. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that this assertion rests on a particular interpretation of political economy, in which communication, economic wealth, and political power are mutually constituted. Not everyone agrees with Vincent Mosco, and this isn't even definitely a clear interpretation of Mosco's book. But it doesn't seem illogical or irrational to assert a connection between communication, power, and wealth. If we do accept this, it's possible to assert that there is always something political about using the internet, because our desire to communicate becomes wrapped up in the power and wealth of others. Given this reading of political economy and the internet, this time I want to take it as a given that using the internet is a political act. However, I want to ask if it's possible to use the internet in such a way that it can be an act for good over ill. I want to ask if using the internet in a morally sound way can override the connections to large corporations. This time, I want to think of a new type of internet user. One who uses their time on the internet to do good, to raise awareness and stand up for the oppressed. I'm sure you know someone like this. Maybe they share messages on social media about the charity that they do for fundraisers. Maybe they just retweet a lot of Greta Thunberg quotations. Or maybe they actively attend Extinction Rebellion or Black Lives Matter protests. Maybe they've actively placed themselves at the odds with police or other legal systems. Maybe, at the most extreme end, they use digital media to keep up with activity of what is referred to as the Black Bloc, or a stream of actively and intentionally violent protesters that emerge out of otherwise peaceful protest movements. Well, this kind of user is someone who uses the internet in an earnest attempt to contribute to society in an, well, as far as they're concerned, morally good manner. They are what we could call a digital citizen. This, of course, necessitates the question, what is a digital citizen? Well, digital citizenship can broadly be understood as the ability to participate in society online. The definition of digital citizenship is indebted to our understanding of citizenship more generally. For this, we could look to the definition of citizenship by T.H. Marshall, who around 50 years ago decreed that citizenship is an endowment of certain civil, political, and social rights as part of a membership to a political community, including the right to share to the full in the social heritage and to live the life of a civilized being according to the standards prevailing in that society. Being a full-fledged citizen of the United Kingdom, for instance, necessitates, or at least implies, the requirement of adhering to an agreed-upon set of laws and working to earn recognized currency before paying a part of those earnings as taxes into a general pot. In turn, should you adhere to these requirements, you are entitled to the protection of the state, given access to healthcare and unemployment benefits, among other bonuses. Today, however, if you want to be a citizen of the United Kingdom, you will find an increasing pressure for you to complete the requirements of your citizenship using digital technology. Applying for work, paying taxes, even obtaining citizenship should you not have been born with British citizenship, is increasingly a digital process. Given the near fundamental place of computers and the internet within Western societies like the United Kingdom then, we're basically forced to concede that using these tools must be an important part of being a citizen more generally. It may well be that a civilized being according to the standards of the society, according to our quotation, is in large parts of the world requires access to the internet and some basic level of proficiency with digital technology. This requires us to rethink the citizen as something that is, at least in part, digital. A digital citizen. However, being a digital citizen isn't quite the same as being a citizen of the UK or the US. There are different political and social expectations placed upon you by the other citizens of the internet, and the constant shifting and evolving notions of civility generated by the users therein. Just as the expectations of the average citizen of the UK shape the expectations and requirements of UK citizenship, so too do the practices of global internet users shape what is required of a user to be seen as a successful digital citizen. Karen Mossberger argues that a digital citizen is someone who 1. Uses technology frequently, that 2. Uses the technology for political information, 3. Uses the technology to fulfill their civic duty, and 4. Uses technology for economic gain. To be a complete digital citizen, therefore, we must take part in the internet regularly, but also use the internet as a source of knowledge, as a source of income, and as a means to meaningfully engage with society. An example could be contributing to the online presence of a political organization, like a party or protest group. Say, the Labour Party, or, well, because I've been mentioning them so much already, let's talk about Extinction Rebellion. If we focus on the Facebook presence of XR as an example, we can see how through their reaching out to members, sharing and generating information, and their use of digital fundraising, they too are satisfying Mossberger's criteria. Going through the various posts on their Facebook feed, they present a stream of important statistics, links to news sites, and to environmental fundraising events to attempt to educate their users and generate money to support their idea of civil duty. There is, however, an interesting, if rather obvious, dilemma to digital citizenship. Not everybody online shares the same political ideology. As such, what constitutes a civic duty is different depending on the user. For instance, Mossberger notes how the internet works well to proliferate an ideology similar to that of traditional American republicanism. Now, that can, broadly speaking, be understood as an ideology that views culture and education as tools to mold a strong collective community, and to place this collective strength above individual equality of opportunity. Within an American Republic ideology, Mossberger writes, education's purpose was not to help individuals get ahead, but to educate a virtuous American citizenry to serve as a democratic backbone to the Republic. This is somewhat problematic, as the urge for a collective ideology and citizenship online can result in the marginalization of voices that don't coincide with dominant ideologies outside of certain online spaces. While traditional republicanism may sound like putting the needs of the many above the few, it's important to clarify exactly what is meant by educating a virtuous citizenry to serve as a democratic backbone. Thinking about the Extinction Rebellion Facebook group once again, there are clear lines of acceptable rhetoric within the followers of the group. Comments that blame politicians, that doubt the authority of scientific experts, or that champion the notion that fixing human-caused damage to the environment is simply a matter of wealth distribution are all lauded. People love those comments. By comparison, comments that highlight the consistent trend in voting against environmental policies that suggest the possibility that humans may simply be too flawed, too selfish, or too idiotic to survive the coming extinction events. That results in negative outcries and sometimes even moderator-imposed bans. The virtuous citizenry of the digital community here are those who not only regularly engage with the online platform, but also side with the ideology persistent in the group. Similar trends are viable in, for instance, the members of the British digital citizenry who, over the last decade, have kept the British Conservative Party in power in spite of their own best interests. From the perspective of the ruling British government, this is undeniably the action of a successfully educated citizenry, and digital citizenship has quite likely played a role in this. It's easy to imagine voters feeling a great sense of collective purpose, and feeling this online by, say, taking part in Boris Johnson's Facebook group. Sharing their thoughts and admiration with like-minded Britons must undoubtedly create a sense of belonging. Alternatively, a similar user could simply frequent the websites of newspapers within the UK, such as The Telegraph or the Evening Standard, ones that maintain an unabashedly right-wing worldview, and receive that same sense of shared British community. This sense of community could then go on to influence voting behaviour, perhaps even encouraging a British voter to act on their emotions in response to rhetoric, rather than as a response to the actions of the dominant political party. Now, we've seen exactly this kind of trend of support emerge for the British Conservative Party, who promoted collectivism through slogans and visual propaganda, which could be viewed as a smokescreen disguising policies that impact Britain's poorest and most vulnerable. The British Conservative government have launched online campaigns that ham-fistedly encouraged working-class citizens to train in science and engineering-based careers, while simultaneously raising taxes and cutting benefits that directly impact the poorest in British society. This is consistent with the party's actions in the last decade in power. However, it's important to remember that the majority of Britain's poorest and vulnerable voters have, at least according to the Rowntree think tank, consistently voted